What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island podcast, the only NFL podcast where you get your takes from a washed-up Division III cornerback. I'm your host, Grayson Jenkins, and I'm joined by a good friend of the podcast, Ty McGee again. And obviously, wildcard weekend came and gone. A lot of teams got eliminated, and Ty's team, unfortunately, was one of those teams, and he was both fortunate and unfortunate enough to be at that game. Cool experience to go there into Buffalo and be a close-up. He had really good seats. Unfortunate, though, with the team obviously having that really big moment, start of the game, Troy Franklin touchdown, and then downhill from there. The divisional round, though, is set. It's a really good slate of games. Each game, you got a lot of things to talk about for each one. I mean, we got the Texans taking on the Chiefs, the Commies taking on the Lions, the Rams taking on the Eagles, and the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Bills. That's a huge one just because year in, year out, right? That's like a very huge matchup when it comes to playoffs. It's either the Bills Ravens, Bills Chiefs, or Ravens Chiefs. Like that's kind of like what you're looking for in the playoffs. But starting off on Saturday, we got the Texans taking on the Chiefs. The Texans coming out really, really slow and for the first half against the Chargers. Then towards the end of the second quarter, they started coming alive a little bit. And then the second half, they really just killed the Chargers, just put them down. Justin Herbert, I believe he had 4 picks, which was more than he had the whole regular season in one game, which was nuts. And it really just kind of showed you who the Chargers really were. The Texans finally just broke out of the offensive slump they were in. CJ Stroud had a good game. Nico Collins had a good game. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one? Who do you got, Texans or Chiefs?
Yeah, I really think it comes down to how well can Pat Mahomes hang onto the football. Obviously, early on in the season, he was turning the ball over a lot, but that kind of simmered down towards the latter half of the season. But we just saw Houston take a quarterback who did not turn over the ball a ton this season and make him throw 4 interceptions, right? I mean, Herbert only had 3 interceptions all year long. So, they really wreaked havoc against that, LA Chargers team. So I think that's the biggest matchup here is Mahomes versus this defense, especially at this point in his career where he doesn't have quite as many weapons as he maybe once did. Whether that's Tyreek leaving or even Rashee Rice just getting injured. So I really think this defense versus Mahomes is going to be a huge, huge matchup, especially because they haven't been able to get the running game going either with Pacheco and Hunt, especially since Pacheco's been back. So it's really going to rely on the passing game and Mahomes to play clean football. On the flip side, right, KC's defense, top 5 in the league in like points allowed and a lot of other statistics. So they're gonna cause a problem for this Houston Texans team as well. Although they just handled the Chargers defense, who's a little bit better than this Chiefs team, excuse me, really well. So I think this is going to be a really good matchup. Maybe a better matchup than I thought it was a week ago, right? Because I think the Texans team really surprised me with what they were able to do last week. I am going to go with the hot hand here, right? I know Casey obviously didn't play last week, but the hot hand being the Texans defense. I think that what they did last week was super duper impressive. I like what they did. I like them to be the upset. I mean, listen, this Chiefs team, right? Although they're the 1 seed, this isn't a Chiefs 1 seed team that we've seen in the past, right? This is a team that's gotten really lucky, skated by kind of all year long. I like Houston right now, even though I did not like them a week ago. Once you get in the playoffs, it's just if you're rolling, you're rolling, right? Like it's a lot different than the regular season. Some teams just lay up to the moment, and it's Houston right now. So I'm going to go with the Texans. I think it'll be a really close one, probably 24-21. I don't imagine them scoring 32 points against this team, even though some of that was the defensive interceptions and stuff like that. But I think 24-21. I think Chiefs are going to get theirs, right? But it's just I think at some point in time, Derek Stingley's going to pick off Mahomes. It's going to change the trajectory of this game. And so I'm going to go with the Texans.
Yeah, I really like you bringing that up, the hot hand, because like you said, the Chiefs didn't play last week. And when we see these teams come out with a bye week into the playoffs, and sometimes they start off a little bit slow. And the Texans, a few years ago, they played the Chiefs in the playoffs. The Texans came out to a huge lead, and then they choked the lead away, and the Chiefs ended up winning. In this game, if the Texans take a big lead, I don't see the Chiefs being able to come back from that this week. Like their offense isn't high powered enough to be able to do that. So if the Texans are able to do that, I could see them winning. Obviously, Derek Stingley, he played a big factor in last week. He could do that again this week and could win the Texans this game. That being said, I think this Chiefs defense at home is very, very good. I think the home environment is going to startle CJ Stroud a little bit in the playoffs. I think he's kind of a like we saw it last year against Baltimore. The home environment in Baltimore kind of got him a little bit startled. It shocked him a little bit, and I think it'll do the same thing again this year with the Chiefs in Kansas City. I think the Kansas City Chiefs will win this one, but I would cheer. I'm going to cheer for the Texans in this one because no one wants to see the Chiefs go out on a three-peat. So I'm going to be cheering for the Texans, but I kind of doubt that CJ Stroud's going to be pull it out. He could prove me wrong, and I would be loved to be proved wrong. I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes in this one. Next, we got the Commies taking on the Lions. This is a really fun one just because Jayden Daniels, right? They kind of seem like the team of destiny right now. Like the last 5 games they've won have come on the last play of the game. Like that's nuts, a nuts statistic for that team. And Jayden Daniels has really led this team to where they're at because he's had a lot of game-winning drives, things like that. When you don't expect rookie quarterbacks to step up, he's been the guy. Like you don't really expect rookie quarterbacks to come in immediately. And obviously this year, right? Or Dan Quinn, first year as a head coach too. They're one of 3 duos as their first year as a head coach, first year as rookie quarterback to come in and make the playoffs and win a playoff game. So it's really impressive what they're doing. And if they can continue that against the Lions, the number 1 seed in the NFC, it would be an amazing feat. The Lions, though, right now they're just humming on every single cylinder. The defense is balling without numerous players. The offense is still really lights out under Ben Johnson as well. So I'm interested to see what Aaron Glenn can cook up for this one to limit Jayden Daniels and on the ground. And then the passing game, Terry McLaurin, you got to limit him a little bit. So I'm interested to see what the Lions do, but I'm going to pick the Lions here in this one in Detroit at home. I think the stadium's going to be going nuts. They're going to be trying to host their first NFC Championship game. So I got to go to the Lions here in this one. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this Detroit team is just so dangerous on in every facet of the game. Getting David Montgomery back this week is obviously huge for them, right? I mean, I know Jahmyr Gibbs is kind of balled out in his absence, but getting that 1-2 punch back for the playoffs is huge for this team because that is their
Mhm.
identity. Run the football, play action, get the ball to your receivers in open spaces because teams are bringing guys into the box and really selling out for that, dynamic run game that they have. I think the Commanders, what they've done is very, very impressive. I like what Jayden Daniels showed us last week, right? Like very resilient, able to bring this team back to a victory, and he's been doing that all season long. I just think that they're playing probably the best team in the NFL right now, and a team that's a lot better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that they played last week, right? I mean, if you look back at that game, if that jet sweep handoff doesn't go awry, the Commanders probably end up losing that game, and Tampa walks away with that one. So I just think, this is a battle of 2 very risky coaches too, but we just saw a lot of the risk for Detroit pay, a lot of the risk that they took in the last game, although they won it just didn't amount to much, right? I mean, they didn't score that many points. They're going for it in 4th and goal in the red zone when they could have taken points. They could have went down 17-16 at a point.
Mhm.
Instead went for it, didn't get it. Obviously, then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fumble. But it's just like I don't think that they are valuing points correctly in certain instances. I think they just are go, go, go. We have Jayden and he's going to get us into the end zone. It's only 2 yards. But I think in the playoffs, it's not, chasing points is not the name of the game. It's win. And I think, that'll show this week. And I just think Detroit's dominance will show this week as well. I like what Aaron Glenn has done on defense with a banged up unit. It's super impressive. I've kind of talked about this with folks before, right? I think, when you start to, and I think we talked about it honestly too. When you start to lose guys on offense, right, that's really hard. But when you lose guys on defense, if you have a really good defensive coordinator who can scheme things up, it's not as huge of a blow. But obviously, Aiden Hutchinson losing a guy like him, who is on the track for Defensive Player of the Year, and guys on the team they still haven't passed him for sacks and stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
that is an insane mark. So I just think everything that this Lions coaching staff has done has been phenomenal. OC, DC, the way that MCDC leads this team. So I believe in Detroit. They're in Detroit. This is the hot team. It's got to be the Lions.
Yeah, and another way I'm kind of looking at this one is the Commanders are going to have a lot more opportunities to get back to this point. They have a really high salary cap, things like that. The Lions, they're going to most likely be losing both of their coordinators this year. You never know how that is going to end up, right? Both offensive and defensive coordinators for them are like the top of their class, and they're one of the top candidates for head coaching positions on both sides of the ball. So if you lose both of those, the Lions, Obviously, the roster is still solid. The head coach, Dan Campbell, is still a solid option. I think they will be fine. But you don't know necessarily what happened to this one. I think the Lions are playing hearts on the line right now for both of those coordinators and their head coach and for the city. So I think the Lions just will probably wipe the floor with the Commanders, if I'm being honest. Next, we got the Rams taking on the Eagles. This is another fun matchup because, like you said, Ty, you talked about this going into the playoffs the first few weeks before the playoffs started. The Rams could make the NFC Championship. That was what you were saying the whole time, is because the Rams offense, when they're fully healthy, they're very dangerous. The Rams defense is also very dangerous. You've seen it week in, week out. They've replaced Aaron Donald very successfully. And the Eagles on the other side of the ball, yes, they beat the Packers, right? They did beat the Packers, and it seemed to be a lot worse than it was. But in reality, the Eagles should have whooped the Packers after getting a fumble on the first play of the game and multiple other turnovers. Like, that game should have been a blowout 30-0, 30-10, something like that. But it wasn't. And it was just the Eagles really felt like they dropped the ball in perspective of that game had all the momentum. They were at home, things like that, and they were playing a team that could not do anything on offense, and they just weren't doing much on offense either. So it kind of made me feel a lot worse about them going into this one than it did if they dominated like they should have. So I'm going to go with the Rams here, beating the Eagles. Momentum's on their side. Their defense is balling. Their offense is playing pretty well. And I just think Matt Stafford, he's a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. And in high momentum or high octane moments, I'm going to go with Matt Stafford versus Jalen Hurts any day of the week. So I'm going to go with the Rams here. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, right? I was hot on the Rams leading into the playoffs, and I know I did take Minnesota last week, right? But that was because that was the team I was the hottest on. And to see what the Rams were able to do last week on the defensive side of the football against
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, I mean that was my one concern with them, right? I knew that they had a pretty good young pass rush, but their defense was a concern for me. I knew their offense was really, really good, and I thought, if the Vikings could stymie them on offense, they have no chance, right? But what they did was remarkable, and if they can even do half of what they did uh, last week, this week against Philly, I think this game is easy for them, right? I know you said Philly should have won by a lot, and I mean if you look at that game, Green Bay should have won that game, but Jordan Love was just forcing balls into
Yeah.
tight windows that he just didn't need to be. He looked like the guy he was at Utah State. So it just you're not going to get that with Matt Stafford. He takes care of the football. He knows this. He knows he hits his spots. He knows his offense very very well. You're just not going to get a lot of opportunities from this Rams offense. They can score and they're not going to turn the ball over a ton. So they're not going to give you a ton of extra opportunities. So, that is why I'm going with the Rams, right? Because I believe in what their defense showed us last week, and this offense is just so high powered, very dangerous. A lot of guys too that have been around that went to the Super Bowl, Cup, Matt Stafford, they have experience, right? McVay, an experienced guy. I know Philly has made it, but the Rams, at the end of the day, they've won it, right? This core, they have won it. Philly unable to win it with this core of Sirianni and some of those guys a couple years ago against the Chiefs. So, I just, I have not been hot on Philly all year, right? I know they've taken care of business when they needed to, and they have Saquon, and he's looked great. But I've just never really been confident in Jalen Hurts. And it's hard to trust them, man, because that game last week, like you said, should have been a blowout. But I mean, the way they played, like the Packers should have beat them. So
Yeah.
it's an easy one for me. The Rams, their offense is very very good, and their defense is hot. So LA.
Yeah, I think if the Rams can slow down Saquon, they should be able to win this one pretty easily, like you said. It's interesting what we'll see what happens on Sunday, and I'm looking forward to that much matchup a lot. Next, we got the Ravens taking on the Bills, a rematch from a few years ago, and the Bills Ravens. Obviously, these are the two MVPs, right? These are the two guys fighting for the MVP. It's already decided in the regular season, right? Doesn't really have an impact, but at the same time, when you're watching this game, whoever wins is kind of like you're like that's the MVP because you're just kind of watching the game and they're playing each other head on. They played each other in regular season, and obviously Derrick Henry pretty much killed the Bills. Like he had a really long run in the beginning of the game and just didn't take his foot off the gas. The Bills, they're hot. They just took down the Broncos, and sorry, Ty, it was an ass whooping, right? Like they were able to take out the starters to end the game, things like that. The Ravens, yes, they beat the Steelers and they did it pretty like it seemingly was very easy as well. That being said, I think the Bills looked better against a hotter opponent than the Steelers than the Ravens did against or the Bills look better against the hotter opponent than the Ravens did against a colder opponent. That being said, I'm gonna stick with the Bills here. I think they're at home. That's gonna play a lot of factors in this one, and it's gonna be a really really cold game. It's gonna be like 8 degrees. The coldest game that Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson have played was like 20 degrees. So they're gonna be pretty cold in this one. I don't know if that's gonna have too much of an impact. They're still both tough guys. Like I'm not saying they're not, but I think the Bills will be able to handle business. And I'm really looking forward to possible Chiefs Bills rematch in the AFC Championship. So I'm gonna go with the Bills here. Who do you got, Ty?
Yeah, I'm here to tell you, I don't think that Bills win was as impressive as you just made it out to be. I know the scoreboard was 31-7, but look at the halftime, right? It was 10-7 at half.
Mm-hmm.
Things kind of got out of control for Denver in the second half. Couldn't run the football, wide receivers dropping balls. You're not going to see that with Baltimore. They can run the football. Yeah, Derrick Henry's going to be able to run the football. And I should say this, couldn't run the football with backs, right? Denver's backs
Yeah.
could not get anything going. Derrick Henry, he's going to get going. Bo Nix, he was able to run. I think Lamar Jackson's going to be able to run, right? I think he's a little bit better of an athlete than a guy with, a broken back. And,
Yeah.
Bo Nix is a good athlete, but Lamar Jackson is top tier athletic quarterback. So, that is the big thing for me, right? Baltimore is not going to make the mistakes on offense that Denver did this past week, right? Maybe Lamar is a little bit more likely to turn over the ball than Bo Nix was, but I mean Lamar as a fumble, maybe a fumble, right? Not interceptions, but I just don't think Buffalo's pass rush didn't really get there. And I don't think it's going to be able to get there this week, right? They forced Bo out, of course, but he was able to evade and make throws, and then his guys would just drop the ball or he would
Mm-hmm.
run. So, I think while Buffalo offensively was very impressive to me, James Cook ran the ball with ease in the first half, and Josh really threw the ball around the yard in the second half. I just don't think that they are going to get as many opportunities, right? I talked about this last week. Denver cannot give Josh Allen consistent opportunities. They didn't turn the ball over, which is great, but they kept punting the ball 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. That gives
Yeah.
Josh Allen unlimited opportunities to go out there and score, right? Baltimore's not going to do that. Baltimore's going to score. They're going to, grind out the clock with some run game. I think Baltimore is going to do everything right that Denver did wrong last week offensively. And then everything that Denver did right, I think they're going to excel on that, right? I think Lamar will do what Bo did, but do it better because he's a better runner. I believe in this Baltimore team. I believe in Buffalo too, right? I think it's just they got a shit matchup. And
Mm-hmm.
not to say that they looked bad last week, right? I just think that they were a product of a team that has really shitty weapons because they have a crap ton of dead cap. And Baltimore's not that. Baltimore handled business last week against the Steelers, scored with ease against a really good defense. TJ Watt had 0 stats, which is
Yeah.
insane, right? If we're talking about Buffalo's D line not really getting there that much last week, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL was out there for the entire game and did nothing. So I think that's a key indicator too. I like the Ravens. I'm gonna go with the Ravens. So yeah.
Yeah, I gotta ask you because I do think this will be a really close matchup. I'm not necessarily saying it'll be a blowout on either sides. I want to know, do you think it'll be a high scoring game or do you think it's gonna be a low scoring game? Because both offenses are pretty high powered. So I'm gonna go, it'll probably be around, I don't know, I'm gonna guess like 27-24, maybe. Yeah, 27-24 Bills. What do you got in the score prediction? High, low? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar, right? Because Buffalo scored 31 last week, a lot of opportunities. I'm gonna go 28-24. I think the Ravens convert on four touchdowns. They're not really kicking the ball that well because Tucker's been kind of ass this year. And I think that's one point in time they stymie the Buffalo Bills on the opposite side of the 50, make them kick a field goal, and that's really the decider for the game. So I'm gonna go 28-24
I like it. I like it.
Baltimore.
I like it. It's exact. It's a good prediction. I think this is really. I mean, I'm excited for the MVP matchup. Do you think Lamar? It's interesting if Lamar balls out, keeps up what he's doing, or if he starts turning the ball over with some pressure in an away game environment. I just think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm excited for this one. I think it's a prime time game on Sunday. Good. It's everyone's eyes are gonna be on them. I'm excited to see what both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson could do. Even though I think Lamar has the MVP in the bag, I think he won it in the regular season. That's fine. But I'm gonna be interested to see what Josh Allen does to compete against him.
No, I'll say this too. I don't think Buffalo, I don't think that home environment is going to be as much as a factor in this game either. Having been there, Bo Nix was calm, cool, and composed in his first ever playoff game as a rookie. I'm willing to bet that Lamar also pretty calm, cool, and collected on the road. So, I know it'll be a little bit colder, but I don't think that's going to be too much of a factor in all of this, the away environment. Not to say that, the fans are great and the environment was awesome. It's just, when you see a rookie quarterback be so
Mhm.
composed and not get rattled by a road environment, I would like to think that that the MVP will perform similarly.
Yeah, and it looked like there might have been a lot of orange in the lower sections of the stadium in that game. I don't know if it was red, just kind of blending with the orange, or if you were there. Was there a lot of Broncos fans kind of taking over the lower stadium side?
Yeah, Denver really showed out for that game. And I saw what makes me think Baltimore probably would too, a lot closer. But yeah, Denver fans showed out, especially on the Broncos sideline.
Mhm.
I got down there pretty early, about an hour in advance, and that entire kind of ring behind the Broncos sideline, there was a lot of Denver fans. Of course, and on the lower ring too, on the far side. So it seemed like the Denver fans kind of bought up the lower section, and Buffalo was everywhere else, but especially on that sideline, on Denver sideline, there was a lot of orange over there. So
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how the fans stack up in this one. We'll see if Lamar can beat Josh Allen or Josh Allen can beat Lamar because that's going to be the narrative. I will say, we'll see if Zay Flowers is out. That might hurt Lamar Jackson a little bit. Zay Flowers has been hit or miss though in big games, so I don't know if that'll be too big of a factor. It's really going to be Derrick Henry and Lamar. Can that run game get off the ground? If it can, they have a real shot at beating the Bills. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, stepping away from the playoffs here, we're going to talk head coaching openings. We got the 6 spots open. We got the Cowboys, the Saints, the Bears, Jaguars, Raiders, and Jets. 6 spots open now with the Cowboys moving on from Mike McCarthy just the other day. A lot of intrigue into some of these different spots. Are they good? Are they not? So we're going to rank our top 6 spots. Ty, you go first. What do you have as your list for the highest appealing job and the lowest appealing job for these head coaches?
yeah, so I think the obvious number one job is got to be Chicago, right? Coming into the season, a lot of people thought that they were going to be a playoff team. They're kind of really set up for success on the offensive. I think my number two would probably be the Jets. They have a really good defense. It's kind of dependent on what they do at the quarterback position, but if you can bring in a head coach that's able to bring back Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams with him, I think another season for them under their belt with Brees Hall and Braylon Allen, maybe Garrett Wilson, depending on if he requests a trade if they come back. But job. And then my number three job, I would probably have to go with Jacksonville. They at least have the quarterback situation figured out. Pretty good defense. Brian Thomas Jr. really came on this year, and he was awesome. Um, and then I think number four, I'd probably go with. I think I would go with Dallas, just given the players that they currently have there. Don't know if that will stay that way, right? Like if Mike is still there, but they do have CeeDee Lamb. They do have Dak. If a guy like Dion ends up there, maybe they trade for Shadur. Who knows? So I think there's some question marks there, and it does hurt you with Jerry Jones being so
Mhm.
involved. I think the next up job would probably be New Orleans because even though they're in cap hell, they at least have some good football players on that team. They kind of need to figure out the quarterback situation, but if you get Mike McCarthy in there, maybe he brings Aaron Rodgers and they get rid of Derek Carr. Who knows, right? So there's some options there. At least they have some football players, even though they're a little bit of an older team. And my last team and this is totally unbiased too, would be the Raiders. I don't think they have much going on there. They don't have much of a foundation. Um, if they had a top tier pick, I think I would maybe put them above some of these other teams. But they don't have a quarterback. They lost themselves to, I think, pick seven. Excuse
Yeah.
me, won themselves to pick seven. And don't really have much going on. It seems like Max Crosby, their best player, their stable of franchise, is really unhappy there. Um, there is just not much going on there that I could be. could be promising for them. So besides Brock Bowers, and your tight end is the only thing promising for you, and a disgruntled defensive end. So
Yeah.
definitely with them last. So just to recap, I'm going to go there: Jets, Jag, Cowboys, Saints, Raiders.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think the Raiders, like you said, that is kind of a tough spot. I think Max Crosby is on his way out. We'll see how that plays out. Maybe their head coach comes in and convinces them to stay, but we'll see it. My list. So I got number one. I got the Cowboys coming in at the top. The Cowboys mainly because I want to say like you have the Cowboys. It's a very prestigious franchise in the eyes of the NFL, right? You go in there, Jerry's World, like it is a very top franchise. You get all of the TV, like they get the TV games, they get the America's game, whatever. I feel like a lot of coaches see that position as a spot that they have like dreamt of for their whole like that is a very prestigious head coaching position, and that's the reason it's up there for me. And it's also on top of that, you have all the players like you mentioned, you got Dak, you got CD, you got Micah Parsons. You have talent there. You just kind of have to fix the roster up a little bit more and then get whatever coordinators you want. And I think that team could go right back to where they've been in the playoffs. Next, I got the Bears. Like you said, the Bears, I mean, they have everything you could ask for as a head coach, right? You got salary cap space. You got Caleb Williams. You got weapons. You got a good defense. There's really not much to complain about, except for the fact that it's not a very well ran team. Like we see it year in year out. The coaches get fired. They're not a lot of loyalty to the coaches. I feel like that kind of hurts in their eyes. But I think once their new head coach comes in, which most likely would be Ben Johnson, I say most likely because who knows still, but Ben Johnson, that would be a really great fit for him at number two. Number three, I got the Jaguars coming in. I think the Jaguars, like you said, they have a lot of talent. They need a good head coach to come turn the team around. They got some salary cap. So whoever comes in there is going to be able to get who they want, add up some talent, and turn that team around pretty quickly. And number four, I got the Saints, simply because, like you said, they have some talent. And the biggest plus to me for a coach coming in would be that Gail Benson, Mickey Loomis literally have unconditional loyalty to their coaches. Mickey Loomis is still sitting in press conferences and saying that Dennis Allen is a good head coach. Like at the end of the year, if you're still thinking about Dennis Allen and saying, "Oh yeah, he was a solid head coach," it was just injuries, things like that, that kind of had caused us to fire him. Like that's a terrible excuse, but it's also just gives the coaches like, "Hey, I can do whatever the hell I want here and stay for a couple years, even if I'm not successful for the first one." At number five, we got the Raiders. Like you said, they only really have Brock Bowers and then a draft pick in the mid, like top 10. Nothing where you can get really a quarterback, but maybe you get a top talent and turn the team around a little bit. At number six, I got the Jets, mainly because it's New York media. You got a lot riding on you week in, week out. It's not a very well ran franchise. The players are all over the place. You got Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. They're both seemingly on their way out relatively soon. We'll see what happens there. And I just don't trust. If you're a head coach going over there, I wouldn't trust anything that you see or hear. They fired Robert Saleh mid-season when he was definitely not the issue, and then the defense went to shit. Like it's not a well-ran team, and I think that really hurts. If I'm a coach going in there, I want to ask them questions like why they fired Rob Saleh, kind of the background behind that, because it really did seem like they just don't trust their coaches. It just seems a terribly ran franchise, and you got the fans on your back week in, week out. And I think if you suck year one, you lose a lot of that fan base, and then you lose the trust of players, things like that kind of snowballs. So that's my list. Anyways, I'll recap. Number one, I got the Cowboys. Number two, I got the Bears. Three, Jaguars. Four, Saints. Five, Raiders. And six, Jets. Anyways, that'll do it for our divisional. Or actually, I'll ask you, Ty, what are your thoughts? Do you got any like huge discrepancies with that at all? Or what are your thoughts?
No, I don't have any huge discrepancies. I just think Dallas being one is definitely interesting. Like, you know, eh, their owner is kind of taking it solo right now. Like their big interview is Dion. Like I don't know. I
Yeah.
just that's one I really struggle with. And when I look down the list, right, it's like when you look at some of the coaches and where they would end up. Like I think like Aaron Glennon at the Jets, and then you get like maybe Brian Flores with the Raiders, right? I think they need like a strong defensive head coach, really like fits that Raiders mindset. Like the Saints maybe end up with McCarthy because he's been there, and I think they need a grown man in the room. Jaguars maybe end up with Ben Johnson, to help groom Trevor Lawrence, and the Bears end up with I think they should go with Pete Carroll because I think they need a grown man in the room as well to help lead a young team. So then you look at Dallas and like they haven't interviewed any of those guys. And I know the head coach
Yeah.
opening just opened, but like the only name that we've heard is Deion Sanders. So like like I just listed all these coaches and places they can go and who's best fit. Like any of them would be great in Dallas. Robert Saleh would be great in Dallas. Like there are a lot of really good head coaches that are, you know, available, but Dallas, I mean, it's just I just
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
I
all over the
struggle
place
with
with
that
Jerry
team,
Jones.
man. I really do. You know, they have good players, but
Yeah. No, I see where you're coming from. I think that does hurt, just like, not having any coaches lined up for interviews. The Bears have like 20 coaches they've interviewed or at least set up to interview. So it is a little bit all over the place. But I think, like I said, that prestigious factor of just going to the Cowboys, like that is huge for a lot of coaches. And I think that that would play a little bit of a factor into it. But we'll see. Right? Like we have no clue what to expect yet for that team. So we'll see how that all plays out. I like your predictions. I would say McCarthy is a great pick for the Saints because he already is linked to the franchise. Mickey he's that kind of coach for Mickey, and a lot of Saints fans hate on him. He has like the same stats as a coach as Sean Payton, so I don't think there should be nearly as much hate as he does get. It's just kind of he's like a meh coach, and he's a little bit older. I think a lot of Saints fans want a younger guy, and I wouldn't complain about that either as well. Anyways, that'll do it for divisional round picks episode. We hope you enjoy everything we talked about. If you guys disagree with any of the picks or our coaches' discussions, comment down below. We'd love to see and engage with you guys. Anyways, that'll do it. We'll see you guys next week. Remember to check us out on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. TikTok's like dying in a week, apparently. So maybe not TikTok, but at Jenks Island. And check us out wherever you get your podcasts at Jenks Island Podcast. We will see you guys next week.